go through. So basically, as we discussed yesterday, and Kotter's model is very important from the practical applications perspective. Levin is the conceptual base, and Kotter developed on that, converted the 3 steps into 8 steps, which are more easily practiced. How to go about it. The procedure becomes very clear if we follow Kotter. As you can see, the first 4 steps of Kotter's 8 essentially are an extrapolation of the unfreezing stage of Levin. 5, 6, and 7 represent the movement part, and the final step, which is most crucial, is refreezing, because whatever you have gained through the entire process, if it is not refrozen, the new thing will slip away and it will get back to business as usual, which is exactly what you do not want, right? So what is happening today, the moment lockdown opens, people just forget that lockdown is opening only for economic reasons. The virus has not gone away. So that is the mistake which happens in organizations also. And in fact, if you recall, why Kotter built up this module, these steps in his module or in his model, is because he first identified what are those things that create hindrance in any OD and change process. And his model is essentially a comprehensive one to ensure that not only it proceeds as it should, it also does not, the organization that is, does not slip back to its original position, right? So what I was talking about is a little more detail on this, how to practice these 8 steps. Those are here. And since this is the last class, kindly unmute whenever you need to and, discuss whatever you want to. So this is a detailing on each one of the steps of Kotter. The concept of creating urgency here. Now, 1 or 2 tips here, because I also happen to teach, though I haven't taught in the last few years as a visiting faculty, a paper called Business Communication, somewhere it is called Managerial Communication. So there I stress on this, that just because you have sent a message or a circular does not mean 2 things you are presuming. One is that it has been read, and second is it has been understood the way you wanted to communicate. I keep on harping on this, and lot of even senior management professionals do not seem to understand the relevance of this, that communication is not what you say. Communication is what the other person understands, because the action will be taken based on what the other person understands. And whatever results have to come, they are going to come because of the action and not because you said something nice. Okay. So that is a very key process. And in communication, I summarize the entire communication in 5 words. First is the basic understanding of communication, and this creating urgency. Why am I mentioning communication here? It is all about communicating. How do you create urgency? So first 2 words of the whole concept of communication is sharing, 1 word, understanding, 2nd word. Communication has happened only when something has been shared and something has been understood, which is the same as what was shared. If I am trying to explain to you an elephant and you are somehow understanding a horse, either there is something wrong in my sharing or there is something wrong in your understanding. or there is something in between, maybe noise or distraction or whatever, which is not allowing the understanding to happen. So we must ensure that there is some sharing, information, data. When that person gives his or her version, then only you can be sure that yes, whatever you were speaking, this is what has been understood. If there is a change needed, then you should explain again that no, this is not what I meant. So sharing and understanding. So while creating urgency, you must ensure that your communications are being read properly or heard properly and understood properly. So these are the first two. And the second principle of communication, 3 words, ABC. Very simple. The first 3 letters of the English alphabets, English language. And it is like the ABC of car driving: accelerator, brake, and clutch in that order. Now, of course, with automated cars coming in, the role of clutch is going away, but accelerator and brake still there. But in communication, you must be conscious of ABC. First, accuracy. Whatever you are communicating, is it accurate? Otherwise, it will cause confusion. You will also lose credibility if it is found to be wrong. B is for brevity. We are in the process of business communication. We are not here to write flowery language, which Shashi Tharoorian language, which no one generally will understand. And the C part is clarity, which is what I gave you an example of clarity. That aapne anda bola ya thanda bola, that should be clear. Comma, full stop, kahan le rahe ho, you should be clear on that. So all those things, and in verbal communication particularly, there are no full stops, commas, they can't read again. So therefore you have to be extra cautious. Where are you taking the pauses? What is the tone of your voice? All of that. So that is how you create urgency, by proper communication. Then what exactly you can do here? So please identify potential threats and develop scenarios showing what could happen in the future. If you do this, what can happen? If you do not do this, what may happen? Build that scenario. Visualization is a very, very powerful technique which can help in people getting convinced. Second part, examine opportunities that should be or could be exploited. Listen carefully. Maybe your team comes up with some idea which you have not thought of, and it could open up an opportunity which can be tapped into it. Start honest discussions and give dynamic and convincing reasons to get people talking and thinking. Don't think that one communication and you have nicely told and therefore the message is conveyed and everybody will start following. I'm sorry, human behavior is not that simple. So it has to be repeated discussions, booster dosages, giving reasons, encouraging people to keep on talking about it so that it spreads and others also come into the picture, right? So remember that the credibility of the communicator is very important. For the union, trade union, any communication directly from the management might always be taken with a pinch of salt. That ye to management ke interest ka hoga tabhi bol rahe. So that is why what you should do is invite their leaders, sit down with them, explain to them, and when they go and communicate after understanding that, it makes a hell lot of difference because they have that credibility with the workforce. So credibility is of the communicator is very important. Request support from customers, outside stakeholders, and industry people to strengthen your argument. Customers, you obviously understand. Customers would include internal as well as external customers. Outside stakeholders. If people in society who have nothing to do with your company are talking well of you, that carries much more weight. So try to keep them also well informed and happy. And the last part, the industry people. What is this industry people? When there are problems, for example, right now, the most affected industry is the hospitality industry, right? So what happens? All the hospitality, the restaurants or restaurant owners and everybody is coming together to find a common solution because everybody is in the same boat. So your OD may be initiated by only your company's needs or even your industry needs, and therefore you need to collaborate, right? So you there's a term for this. It's slipping out of my mind. It is kind of some cluster formation, right? So what do? You are competitors, yes, but there are certain things which are affecting you as well as your competitors. So you get together to find a solution. So those kind of situations can also come where your OD and change initiatives are dictated not only by internal reasons, but by external factors, and where you should collaborate, right? So as far as creating urgency is concerned, see the percentage Cotter has given. For change to be successful, 75% of a company's management needs to buy into. Buy into means getting convinced about. Buy into the change. In other words, you have to work really hard on step one and spend significant time and energy building urgency before moving on to the next step, right? So this is where one of the identified issues why OD efforts fail by Cotter. You would have seen that management tends to declare victory too soon. You have convinced 50%, 51%, so you think you will win. No, some of them may go back. So you have to go as high as 70%, 75% of the people to be convinced about what you are doing. Then only you can expect things to go as you expect them to go. Okay. Don't panic and jump in too fast because you don't want to risk further short-term losses. If you act with proper preparation, you could be in for a bumpy ride without proper preparation. So this is a caution on this step that Cotter has put in. Coming to step 2. Just to read through, we have talked about this. This is where the force field analysis concept comes in. For a powerful coalition, and in today's day and age, you are very, very familiar with coalition governments all across, right? So convince people that the change is necessary. You started in step 1 itself. This often takes strong leadership and visible support from key people. So again, the concept of facilitating forces, supportive forces comes in. managing change is not enough. You have to lead it. Okay. So you have to develop credibility as a leader. You have to show a sense of direction, which your juniors may not be able to see. And that is why, if you remember, yesterday, I think I did mention about President Kennedy and NASA, where they have been able to penetrate their thoughts to the level of a person who is sweeping the washroom. But when President Kennedy goes and asks that person, "Hey, young man, how are you? What are you doing?" So his answer is, "I am putting the man on the moon." He doesn't say, "I am, sweeping the floor of the washroom." So that is the kind of leadership NASA had shown, which is why they are a successful organization, that they are able to, and this in management jargon is also called line of sight, vision. Line of sight is obviously the calculations that people do, the rocket scientists do to put people on the moon may not be understood by the sweeper because of his limitations of the kind of upbringing he went through. But this much he understands, that we are trying to put a man on the moon, which is a huge achievement. So this is how leaders tend to behave. You will see all top leaders talk in very, very simple terms. You will never find Mahatma Gandhi's speeches or Martin Luther King's speeches and all Swami Vivekananda's speeches as something which normal or ordinary people will not understand. It's not that they are themselves not very evolved. They are very much evolved. They are very sharp, intelligent people, but they have a way, they have a knack of communicating in simple words so that everybody down the line is one and bound by that vision. So that is why it says managing change is not enough. You have to lead the change, and nothing better than by doing it, right? So let me give you an example as to how these people, so that, we, in our factories also, now of course it's a different matter, but earlier we were not that particular about following every rule in the book. Sorry. So those of you who have visited a factory, manufacturing, where manufacturing is happening, you will find there are yellow lines drawn. And all the machines have to be within the yellow lines. And there are walkways clearly demarcated. So I remember an instance in our Yamaha plant. Now, of course, Yamaha is not Escorts. So in our Yamaha plant, the collaboration with the Japanese was on. And one of their top persons was there. I'm forgetting his name. These are complicated. So he and the head of that motorcycle division were having a round in the manufacturing area. So this Japanese guy, he noticed that there was some oil which had kind of flown into the walkway from the machine area, right? He noticed that. He didn't do anything, didn't call anybody, and he knew where the side shelves or almirahs are there. He just walks up there, picks up a huge pack of cotton, squats on the floor near that oil, and starts cleaning the place. Imagine what a powerful message. Immediately, of course, the workers and everybody rushes in. No, sir, no, we'll do it. He did not wait. He did not instruct. He did not scold anybody. So this is leading by doing. So that is what is meant by leading change. Unfortunately, politicians of today, many of them, will say, please do what I say. Don't do what I do. So their actions and words are completely different, and that is why they don't enjoy the kind of support or the respect that they would do if they were leading change rather than just managing change. I mean, you find Health Minister of Karnataka without a mask and in a huge procession. I mean, what kind of message are you sending? The former CM of Karnataka has his son's marriage where 20 people are allowed. He has so many, 300 people odd or whatever. So this is where you find that people are just trying to lead, not trying to just hold a political position, just manage, but not lead. Okay, so the rest of it I think is, the last para again is talking of the Change Coalition, which is very, very important. Once formed, your Change Coalition needs to work as a team, continuing to build urgency and momentum around the need for change. Remember, one leader cannot be present everywhere. So what will bind the group together? This is the Change Coalition, right? So what can you do here? Simple. And remember, leaders are there in every single group. Don't think that people lower down do not have leadership skills, right? Many years back, we were doing a program for the transportation company of ITC. So these were the company, this was the division which was providing the cars for their guests to go and visit places or for official purposes or whatever. So somebody is taking a car to Jaipur or Jaisalmer or something. So next 4 or 5 days, they will be off from there. So when we met the executive director, they liked our approach, what we presented. They said, yes, we should go ahead with you for the training of people. So after the concept was discussed, then he said, okay, let's come to the practicalities. Which group of my employees would you like to begin with? I said, I would like to begin with your chauffeurs. So he was quite stunned. He looks at me, chauffeurs? Every consultant comes and tells me that, you have to involve top management first, this, that, and the other. You are saying exactly the opposite. I said, yes. He said, why? I said, because the way I look at it, this particular division, we have to assess which of your employees are spending the maximum time with your customers. So you have a very smart salesperson who has given the customer the comfort and the car number and organizes everything. That happens in a space of 15-20 minutes max. And then what happens? Next 4 days, this particular customer is with the chauffeur. So if the chauffeur misbehaves to the slightest extent, or even the client perceives that it is a misbehavior, are you sure that he will or she will again hire a cab from you? Irrespective of how good the salesperson was, irrespective of how good you were. And remember, these people are generally from a slightly lower socioeconomic backgrounds. They are basically they are drivers, right? Unfortunately, they were born in places where they could not get a very high education or etiquettes and things like that. And they have to deal with your clientele who come from all over the world. So something which is completely acceptable in A culture may not be at all acceptable in B culture. So are we giving them those inputs that for a Japanese guest, you should behave like this? For an American guest, you should behave like this. For a European guest, you should behave like this. Are we giving them those inputs when we expect them to handle the customers beautifully? So that is where true leaders, this is a very, very important aspect, that true leaders have to be identified at every level, right? And who are your key stakeholders? Don't work in the air. And that is why I keep on harping about rationality, analytics, right? Then second point here, what we can do ask for an emotional commitment from these key people. At the end of it, as they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And the creation of the pudding depends on understanding rationally what are the ingredients, in what proportion, etc. But then there has to be an emotional commitment to make it work. Okay. So that is the right kind of mix. This is obvious. Work on team building within your Change Coalition. And many of you might be knowing, typically when we do OD and change management processes for organizations, our clients, we have a team from our side, depending on the size of the assignment, but we insist that there has to be a team on their side also who will collect information from within. That also saves costs for the client. And then we ask for a SPOC, single point of contact. For all the internal things will be routed through one person, right, to us. And we will also mostly correspond with that person unless we are having a team meeting, right? So work on, yeah, somebody has a question, it seems.
Ask a small question.
Okay. So this one is obvious. Team is needed, and check your team for weak areas. Ensure that you have a good mix of people from different departments and different levels within your company. Now, this is an issue I used to face perennially when I was a visiting faculty for many years at NIFT Delhi. Right? So these are artistic kind of people. They are wonderful in designing. But I had to, and that is why management subjects were introduced. So I had to make them conscious of the fact that we have created a brilliant design. But please understand, if you have to go in for making a commercially viable or venture, then you have to also think how many people have the ability to pay the kind of pricing that it entails with this design, and particular design is still okay, the kind of fabric, the kind of material you will use. Is it possible for you to give them a less expensive alternative? Then you will have more customers. You know, that's human behavior. So we have to also keep in mind the purchasing power of people. That is very, very important, right? Now in this, for example, we need to constantly, please do not presume that people will understand these things. Now, of course, it will take a little time, but there is a very interesting example. I have a very dear friend. Of course, that time he was not so close. I met him for the first time then. His name is Karthik Raina, and he has been the MD of Dabur Foods. Now he's a marketing consultant, very senior man. So he was invited by us for a session on brand equity. So, you know, this is a very good insight into how you have to understand people's behavior. So fine, he came and then he said, well, it seems most of you are from Delhi and I am from Dabur. So let me take an example from Dabur and talk about the Delhi market so that you can relate to it. I said, fine. So he says, okay, I'll talk about Dabur Lal Dant Manjan. At that point in time, this was about 20-25 years back, mid-90s or so. So he says, Dabur Lal Dant Manjan is a 105 crore brand. Remember, in 1995, 105 crore was huge. And more importantly, again, this is analytics. Selling a car worth 3 lakhs and creating 105 crores is one aspect. But selling those sachets of 50 paisa and 1 rupee and making 105 crore sales, you can imagine the amount of logistics involved. You can imagine how many retailers would be there and how to bring all of them in the chain and convince them to sell. So then he says, next sentence, that was the key and the clincher. Now remember, we are talking of Dabur Lal Dant Manjan. And he says, the biggest markets in Delhi that I have are Golf Links, Friends Colony, Vasant Vihar, etc. Now, obviously, people immediately started imagining, what is he talking? Who in Friends Colony or Golf Links or Vasant Vihar would be using Dabur Lal Dant Manjan? So he could see the blankness on people's face. So he just said, hey, what happened? You don't believe me? So there was a youngster, and as you know, these youngsters are very upstart. So he immediately says, obviously, sir, how can we believe you? So he says, you think I'm telling you a lie? He says, obviously, sir, in joking tone only, but that, you are pulling a fast run on us. That was his message. And then came the shocker. He says, no, I am telling you the absolute truth. And this is where you have gone wrong on analytics. The moment I talk about Golf Links, Vasant Vihar, and, your Friends Colony, immediately you think in terms of, those huge limousines going out and, all huge multi-crore-patis and all of that industry. Who's going to use Dabur Lal Dant Manjan? What you have really forgotten is that these are precise kothis where there would be 4 residents or 2 residents and there would be 30 servants. And those servants are also well paid. So they have the purchasing power to buy my product, which is Dabur Lal Dant Manjan. I have to keep full stocks in Golf Links, Vasant Vihar, and Friends College. So you see, this is where unfortunately we go emotional and we stop there. Please think. Emotions and rationality have to go in proportion to what we do. Personal life, you do whatever emotion. In business, you have to be rational first. And I said the other day, what better example can you have of success and failure other than Mukesh Ambani and Anil Ambani? Mukesh Ambani is out and out a business savvy person. Even in these COVID times, he has gathered money of 2,000 crores. 2,000 crores. And it is a debt-free company virtually now. So that is business savviness. All rational thinking. You will not see him ever making a joke or this or that. He goes about his job in a very clinical manner. Whereas Anil Ambani is the flamboyant, emotional kinds, and see what mess he has created out of his businesses. So please, this one is very, very important. Check your team for weak areas and ensure that you have a good mix of people from different departments who understand different things. Somebody has to understand finance, somebody has to understand, markets, and most importantly, HR, which is where, most companies get beaten. So this you
Sumit, can I ask a question, please?
Please go ahead.
Can you elaborate on this asking for a commitment, emotional commitment? How exactly do you go about it? You just talk to them about their emotional involvement in this, or you prepare them to accept the change in on the emotional level?
Absolutely, wonderful question. See, what I understand, and all these years in my about 4 decades in HR, I have understood one thing, that if you have to genuinely motivate a person, there are 2 clear ways of doing it. One is you have to create a superordinate goal where he forgets about his own comforts and there is a bigger vision than how it helps me. And it is absolutely true of the armed forces. It is a superordinate goal of what is the soldier on the other side and the soldier on this side, what enmity do they have against each other? Why are they killing each other? There is a superordinate goal. It is my country, my nation, right? So that typical slogan of Naam, Namak and Nishan. So that is where there is a superordinate goal. So I feel pride in being part of a company, and if my company does well, I go out in the society and say, you know, we are the best company in India. For example, somebody working for Tata's have this kind of pride generally in India, or one of the big multinationals. So management practices are changing. A lot of these big companies are also coming into the disrepute because of unethical things. Volkswagen, for instance, created a defeat device which showed lower emissions. Their computerized control in the car showed lower emissions than they were actually having. And they got a solid beating once it was discovered. And a company like Volkswagen lost out on its reputation for years. So that is superordinate goal. The other part of motivation is to show how the person himself gains out of it. Like I had given the example previously, that if a person is a chain smoker and that is affecting his lungs, so you keep on telling him, counseling him lightly, making him understand, please don't do it because it will this, you are harming your health. You have done it for 30 years and nothing has happened. But there is a possibility where you say, hey, you are going to die tomorrow if you don't give up this habit. So that is the creation of panic. That is one. So I am talking of individual motivation. Either you have to show that you will lose something which is precious to you, or you will gain something which is precious to you. These are the only ways of motivating. Show the person somehow how they stand to gain when they work as a team, and they all enjoy the benefits of it, either in terms of their personal goals or in terms of superordinate goals. In fact, if you go back to the first term notes or slides, you will find a model of McKinsey's 7S, where they have put 1S as a superordinate. So these are the ways of creating a clear vision in their mind by answering the question, whether they ask it or not, it is always working at the back of their minds. Americans have created a slogan called, what's in it for me? So what's in it for me can be answered at two levels. One, at the superordinate level, where the person doesn't bother about his life because he is onto a higher mission. Second, his personal likes and dislikes you have to understand. His personal aspirations you have to understand, and either show that what you are suggesting will further his aspirations, achieve them, or will stop him from achieving those. Right?
Thanks.
So that is, and it also happens at the, if people are more, more emotional than rational, and there have been a couple of people I have counseled as part of my MA social work, where what was happening, these parents who were poor themselves were cutting out too much on their own comforts and food even to look after their kids. Now, I was telling them that please understand, if you spoil your health like this, by the time your child reaches the age of 10 or 12 and you reach the age of 35, 40, you will be dead. You have to take care of yourself first, to some extent at least, a reasonable extent, not pass on everything to your kids. You are harming them more by neglecting your own health. Do you even realize what will happen if you are not there? They will still be 8, 10 years of age. What happens to them? So those are the kind of things you have to understand, where a person is going wrong, where is a team going wrong. So those are the ways in which you can, to my mind, of course, I'm not saying that is the end of the story. You can have a million ways of achieving these, but these are your basic objectives that have to be fulfilled if you have to motivate an individual or a team. I hope some
Yes.
clarity. Okay. Can I move on?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So vision for change, we have talked about that enough. And what I just now said in answering the question also is a vision for change. Vision at the superordinate level, vision at the personal level. So what can you do? I will move a little faster now because time is not exactly our friend. So if you have a question, please ask. These, to my mind, are pretty simple. Right? So the fourth one is extremely important, that it should not be too long. It should not be a lecture mode kind of thing, one-way communication. It has to be a short, crisp message. And I'll strongly recommend you to both, one you can read, probably, I don't know whether there cannot be any recording possibly, of Swami Vivekananda's speech in Chicago in 1893. But I have read the whole thing. And in fact, yesterday also we got a WhatsApp message that in the Chicago, one of the libraries, that is still etched. And any of you are interested can remind me, I can send it to you. So that is one. And exact contrast, that was a visionary speech by him. But an exact contrast, if you happen to see the movie Pattern, General Pattern, and the kind of filthy language he uses, that is also communication, but he is able to inspire. So you have to differentiate between what is the situation in which the leader is talking, right? So Swami Vivekananda's speech was a super speech for that scenario, where he starts with brothers and sisters of America in a very cool, composed kind of mind. Whereas this guy, he is energizing his army to kill the enemy. So that language cannot be brothers and sisters in the army, please go and kill people. That won't have that impact. So that is how you need to realize that and a good leader is able to visualize the situation and accordingly lead. There cannot be one size fits all leadership. The same person in today's world has to have. That is why Krishna is such a fantastic leader model. Forget about God or religion. Different situations. Mahabharata poses so many different situations and how they are handled. Right? And remember, what appeals to us as those one-liners which top people use in their speeches, these are all not practiced. They only have the intelligence to know which situation, which one I will use. It's not that they are so bright and brilliant that, each time a situation is, they create a 2-word, 3-word, 5-word phrase. No. So it is a practice. Communicate the vision. We have talked enough on communications. You can quickly go through. So basically 2 ideas here. Para 1 is about what I just explained to you in communication, 5 words. You must share, people must understand, and you must be conscious of ABC, accuracy, brevity, and clarity of whatever you are saying or writing, right? Then repetition. Repetition is a very, very important thing. All great personalities in any sphere, if you look into how they achieved, you will find it is nothing but practice and practice and practice. Whether it's a Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, or Jasprit Bumrah, or a Kapil Dev or Gavaskar, or it is a Gulzar Saab. Gulzar Saab was asked in an what is it called, interaction or interview by the anchor that, well, Gulzar Saab, आप तो कमाल का लिखते हैं, जो भी कुछ आप लिखते हैं वो इतना पॉपुलर हो जाता है, इतना बढ़िया आप लिखते हैं, एकदम दिल को छू जाता है. And what was his answer? He says, नहीं बस ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, मैं तो मजदूर आदमी हूँ, मैं रोज सुबह अपने डेस्क पे बैठ जाता हूँ 10 बजे राइटिंग डेस्क पे और लिखता हूँ और शाम के 5 बजे तक लिखता हूँ. Now try to imagine a person of Gulzar Saab's ability in writing. If he writes for 7 hours a day, let us say he would have at least written 10 pages. By that yardstick, at the end of each year, he would be able to produce a book of 3,650 pages, and each word would be brilliant. But is that so? There is some one word in that, one sentence, one share, one dialogue which impresses out of this entire thing. But that would not have been created if he had not worked on the entire 3,650 pages. Unfortunately, people do not see the hard work that goes behind the expertise that you see today. Right? So that is what is the essence of the second para. And third, of course, I have explained already, given you that example of Yamaha head also, who was squatting down and cleaning up the oil. So walk the talk. Just saying will not. So what can you do here? Pretty simple. And one more point I want to share with you, particularly useful for the people who are younger and still rising in your careers. The seniors probably would know. You see, why do I try to create slides like this? Where if I wish, now time is not our friend, therefore I'm putting up all the points together. But if time is not an issue, ideally, this is the way it should be done. This is called the revelation technique in presentation skills, because if I show too many points at the same time, the audience will have people whose reading speeds are different. Somebody would be reading point 1, somebody would have reached point 3 already, somebody may have a habit of reading from the bottom to top. So what is happening? And I am trying to explain point 3 and no one is focused on point 3, let us say. So therefore, if you use this revelation technique, giving 1 point at a time, you have not given them any opportunity to go beyond this point. So the entire focus is on this point. You explain this point and then only you move on to the next. That would be the right way to present your ideas. Though of course I am flouting it here because of the time constraint, right? So this is pretty simple. I think we can move on. Then removing obstacles. Very, very important. Nothing will go as smoothly as you would like it to move, right? So there would be obstacles. So you have to be careful about, while a lot of them would be working towards that vision, are there still some people resisting it? And there would always be. They will become the bottlenecks. So are some people resisting the change? Are there some processes or structures that are getting in the way? You can see it very clearly because of the corona problem. There are so many decisions now being taken which were earlier procedure bound. There were always restrictions. So the emergency powers, we have already said right in the beginning, create a panic, create an emergency situation, emergency mindset. But in spite of that, whenever you are proceeding, there will be some who would be resisting it. Identify those people, identify the processes or structures that are coming in the way, and therefore the last para, put in place the structure for change and continually check for barriers to it, remove obstacles. Removing obstacles can empower the people you need to execute your vision, and it can help the change move forward. Right? What can you do here? So there are some people who are very good change leaders. If you have them, you have identified. If you don't, then hire some. And in fact, hiring of OD consultants is also part of this point. Because an outside OD consultant, we discussed this in the early classes, they do not have any axe to grind within the hierarchy of the organization. They only want their professional fee to be paid properly and a good word-of-mouth publicity for them so that they can get their next assignment based on their competence. So, hiring external people always add value. Look at organizational structures. Are they becoming a constraint somewhere? Compensation systems. Is it geared to recognize? The next point also relates to that. If there is a recognition and reward according to recognition, then it will hasten the process of change. Identify people who are resisting the change we've talked about. Take action quickly to remove barriers. Right? Create short-term wins. What is this point about? Briefly, I touched upon when I said that what motivates people, either a superordinate goal or some beneficial thing that they see for themselves happening if they go through this process. So you should plan your process in such a way that some of your activities should lead to some positive results quickly, because that motivates them to go on further. They get a feeling automatically that we are on the right track, we are succeeding. Not many people have the patience to wait for 1 year to get their results. So there has to be some kind of immediate success stories, which has been called quick wins, that staff can see. Without this, critics and negative thinkers might hurt your progress. कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, कुछ नहीं हो रहा है, इन्होंने तो बोला था ये हो जाएगा, उन्होंने तो बोला था वो हो जाएगा. Right? So we need to look at this. So an intelligent leader will understand that everybody does not have that vision कि ये 3 साल बाद होगा, पर हमें patience रखना है. Most people will like to see some quick gains so that they feel motivated to further go on the same route. So create short-term targets. That's the key, not just one long-term goal. And see the last 2 lines. Each win that you produce can further motivate the entire staff. That is how you have to go about it. So what can you do here? So the first point is extremely important. A good change leader will also be able to identify which are the ones that I can get success even if people are resisting that. for those points and create success so that gradually people will be convinced over to your side. Okay. So look for surefire projects that you can implement without help from any strong critics. So to silence the critics, there is nothing better than showing you are achieving success, and that will drive the people who are on the borderline. Don't choose expensive target objectives, because you will have to justify the investment that you make in each product. Right? Thoroughly analyze the potential pros and cons of your targets. If you do not succeed with an early goal, it can hurt your entire change initiatives. Now, what is happening? Please understand the balance. We are very, very clear as per the force field analysis that in everything there would be supporting forces and restraining forces. So if I get early failures, what will happen? The initial resistors who are anti me will have a floodgate opened up. See, we told you nothing will be achieved. We told you this man is crazy. This team is crazy. So that then the fence sitters, borderline cases, are likely to jump into the restraining forces. हाँ सही तो कह रहे हैं, कहाँ achieve हो रहा है? So you have to be. So that is why I say, only jumping into it emotionally will not help. You have to have rationality behind that. Reward people who help you meet the targets. So that is again satisfying some kind of personal aspiration. So short-term wins. Reward people, then build on the change. Now this is where Cotter has cautioned that many projects fail because victory is declared too early. Real change runs deep. Quick wins are only the beginning of what needs to be done to achieve long-term change. Launching one new product using a new system is great, but if you can launch 10 products, that means the new system is working. It will consolidate your gains, right? So to reach the 10th success, you need to keep looking for improvements. There is a saying in sports that what needs to be achieved, when you look at it, just because you could not achieve it yesterday should not be a barrier. But at the same time, look at what are the good things that you could achieve, right? If I remember correctly, the only Hockey World Cup that we ever won was in 1975. And Balbir Singh Sr., who just passed away, who was 3-time Olympic gold medalist winner in the team, and then he was manager of this team. Those days you didn't have fancy things like coaches and this and that. So there was one manager and the team kind of an approach. So India lost, I remember, I think it was to Argentina, which was not a great team those days, 1975. India lost. And then the next morning in the team meeting, Balbir Singh Jr. tells the team that just forget about what happened. Just because you couldn't beat Argentina does not mean you can't beat better teams. And that motivated the boys so much that, the next beat, I think Germany it was, and gradually we went on, and the rest is history, how we won even in the finals. Even semi-final was a crazy situation where Malaysia was leading us. Last 10 minutes, Aslam Sher Khan, who was a new player at that time, was put in as a substitute. And he scored a goal and equalized. And that is how in the extra time then we won. And then final, of course, against Pakistan, which is always a crazy thing, crazy match in any sport. That is where it was Ashok Kumar, who was Dhyan Chandji's son, who scored the second goal, and that first victory. So all that is history. All this, unfortunately, people are very, very enamored by films. This whole story of day is nothing but actual hockey instances picked up from the field and woven into a story. 3 different incidents that craze to, what is it called? Coach women hockey players. There's a guy called M.K. Kaushik, Maharaj Krishan Kaushik, who did this from his story. The goal that he missed out, that Shah Rukh Khan missed out, that actually happened in the 1982 Asian Games in Delhi. Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister, was sitting in the stadium watching, and we lost for the first time 1-7 to Pakistan. Interestingly, the goal that was scored was also scored by Zafar Iqbal, who was the captain, and the penalty that was missed was also by Zafar Iqbal. Now, unfortunately, when 7 goals were scored, then everybody piled on to the goalkeeper, right? That was Mir Ranjan Negi. And the country went berserk after him. Now, unfortunately, it is not only the goalkeeper because of whom 7 goals were scored, boss. So if you are over emotional, you tend to commit these mistakes. So that story was picked up from there. So all this was put together, and Jaideep Saini and the entire team, and particularly Shah Rukh Khan, got all the credit, for which credit should have gone to the actual Indian hockey players, coaches, and the management. Okay, and even that one lady not playing till the semi-finals was probably picked up from this Aslam Sheikh Khan, who didn't play a match. Only in the semi-finals he got a chance as a substitute, and then he scored the goal. So so if you go deep into things, all films are from real life, but unfortunately we don't pay any attention to real life, and we are enamored by real life. Right? Okay, so this is about build on the change. What can we do here? After every win, analyze what went right and what needs improving. It is an obvious thing. Set goals to continue building on the momentum you have achieved. Learn about Kaizen. We have discussed Kaizen and BPR both, which are the opposite sides of the continuum. Kaizen is evolutionary, BPR is revolutionary. And keep ideas fresh by bringing in new change agents and leaders for your change coalition. You must be very, very keen observer as to who is taking the lead, and encourage them in different ways at different levels for the big change. Remember, all big changes are a add-on of small changes. That wo boon boon se sagar banta hai na? Every drop in the ocean contributes to the ocean. That is the kind of philosophy that you need to propagate and implement. The last point, anchor the changes in corporate culture. Where we started today, you remember, quarter's 8th step is about refreezing. So this is the refreezing step. To make any change stick, it should become part of the core of the organization. And again, I'll quote what I did, I think yesterday or last week. Alvin Toffler, one of my one of the authors who influenced me the most. And his first book that I read, I was in my master's in those days. And typically as a student, I was just lying down, every week, 1 or 2 novels would finish. So I started reading his book, Future Shock, in that manner. And he was the first author who could ever clean bold me, because after 50-60 pages of reading, I realized I am a Dumbo. I have not understood anything about this thing. And then I had to literally go back and read it like a textbook with markings, pencils, this, that. Then it started making tremendous sense. He passed away in 2016. But what he said in the 70s, I'm talking about this book was written in the 70s. Today, 50 years later, it is absolutely implemented in every which way. So what did he say later, of course? That the illiterate of the 21st century, the current century, is not the one who does not know how to read or write, but the illiterate is the one who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. That is what is reflected here. So we have to unlearn whatever we have, not whatever we have done, but many of the things that we have done so far. We have to relearn to do it. Unlearn that, then relearn. So first learn, then unlearn and relearn, and this cycle will continue. So make it stick for the time it works for you, and then again you have to ready for changes. It should become part of the core of your organization. Your corporate culture often determines what gets done. So the values behind your vision must show in your day-to-day work. Make continuous efforts to ensure that the change is seen in every aspect of your organization. There is a saying, no, in English, seeing is believing. मेरे सामने दिख गया तो मुझे ठीक लगता है, you know. So this will help give that change a solid place in an organization's culture. So you are anchoring the changes you have brought about. It is also important that your company's leaders continue to support the change. This includes existing staff and new leaders who are brought in. If you lose the support of these people, you might end up back where you started. So you must anchor it properly into your organizational culture, the changes that you have brought about. So what can you do for achieving this? Pretty simple. Whatever progress you have achieved, you have to talk about it so that people know and see for themselves. Unless you point it out to them, many of them will not be able to see. So you have to make it a practice to disseminate the successes. Tell success stories about the change process. Right? Include the change ideals and values when hiring new staff. When you are hiring new staff, when you are training new staff, you must be clear in every potential candidate that you are interviewing or making him or her go through the selection process. You have to somewhere test whether they are open to these kind of values that you cherish. Then publicly recognize key members of your original change coalition and make sure that the rest of the staff, new and old, remembers their contribution. You must highlight that these are the people, and highlighting does not mean you have to always give a monetary reward or something. You can simply have a small meeting where you invite the person on stage and ask him or her to talk about how he achieved it. And at the end of it, you can have a small tea get together or something, just to bring in that camaraderie in the team or the department or the company. Create plans to replace key leaders of change as they move on. So ensure if somebody has helped you to achieve this, they have also got aspirations. So move them to higher positions of responsibility and let new leaders take it. This will help ensure that their legacy is not lost or forgotten. Also, there is a concept of archiving. It means do not reinvent the wheel. The new people should not again rework on what has already been done. So it should be documented properly. I would strongly recommend those of you, some of you may have heard of, there is a book which I have also not read, I must admit full, but I was reading excerpts of it. There is a book called Die Empty by Todd Henry. So whenever you get time, at least go through this thing. You can Google it and find out some little bits. Wonderful idea on, and it relates to this. That whatever good ideas are there in your brain must be used before you leave this world. That is the kind of thought process he has propagated. Okay. So that brings us almost to the end. Yeah, please. Please.
The name of the book.
Hello?
The name of the book and the author once again.
Okay. The book is called Die Empty. Die, D-I-E, death, die. Die,
Okay.
empty, khali,
ठीक है.
empty, by Todd, T-O-D-D, T-O-D-D, Todd
Okay.
Henry, Henry, Henry.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Todd Henry. In fact, just remind me, I also have a summary in my WhatsApp itself. I can send you the summary straight away. Any of you are interested, just drop a WhatsApp message. I will send the summary of it. And then if you feel interested, you can further read.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. No issue at all. It's a brilliant thought process that he has propagated. Okay. So these are a kind of summarization of the ideas in this. And any questions? Of course, normally it could be the last session, but that does not mean our relationship ends. So if any of you have an issue, you can always speak to me. You can always write to me through email. If it is a longish thing, you can send an email. My only request is, ideal time to speak to me is late evening, 6:30 onwards. And I am a late nighter. So 12 or 1 at night, no issue at all. During the day at 12, I might be sleeping. But at night 12, your mobile, your phone will be picked up in the first ring probably. So that is the only this thing. Or else you can always WhatsApp, email, whatever. No issues at all. I always learn when I interact with people. So I have a selfish interest involved in that also. Right? So when we interact, when we discuss, and I am fond of one of the things that Dalai Lama has said, that, if you keep on speaking all the time, then you are only repeating what you already know. If you listen to others, you are going to get some new ideas. So this is a brilliant explanation of how we should behave. Unfortunately, classes and particularly online classes are such that we do not have that scope, and I keep on blabbering. But that is not my normal nature. I would love to listen to ideas all the time. Right? Okay, any questions quickly, if you have? Doesn't seem that you have a question. So therefore, let me wish you all the very best, not only in the ISTD exams, but in everything that you want to do. And let's be in touch. All the very best.